in the body were targeted by biowarfare techniques through inoculations.
Mm.
They could never come out and tell the public the truth now. They could never, ever admit to it, what they've actually done.
So
and yet, if you go through history, what you do find is when these people have their big meetings and fund groups to promote something and do something, they will do it.
Mm. Yeah, they will just do it. I mean, I don't even know if we ever... some researchers refer to that there is, meticulous, documentation of every little step and move and stuff like this. But in a way, all these people have to do really is just to do it, follow up on it, implement it, and they don't have to instigate it in any way or document it meticulously. But there might be, even as you say, there might be documentations, but the documentation in this sense might be the whatever the UN reports on fertility or sterile, how many people are sterile, basically. I don't know.
In a day of crisis, with crisis creation everywhere, this is the time of crisis creation.
Mm.
Every year the United Nations comes out with the statistics.
Yeah.
And they always comment if it's out of their hands, if it's something that's happened out of their hands.
Mm-hmm.
But they reel off the sperm count in the male as it drops and have no comment on it.
Yeah.
That is your proof that it's meant to be.
Oh, man.
Or there would be a comment on it.
That's right. And something would be, a group would, be assessed to this problem or whatever, that, okay, we need to take care of this problem or research it and implement something. And I have no idea if something is going on that level, do you?
No, there are none. All you have are the population reduction groups
yeah.
run through various so-called, I think it's front feminist organizations, like Planned Parenthood that was started off by Margaret Sanger, who was funded from the top foundations.
Yeah.
She was a supporter of Adolf Hitler's policies and Stalin's policies.
Yeah.
And she was also a eugenicist. She wanted all inferior types killed off. She started off the whole Planned Parenthood agenda. All these characters are funded from the same source. The United Nations has massive departments to do with depopulation, but nothing to do with population or repopulation.
Yeah, there we go.
That's our clue about our great big, wonderful United Nations.
So we might be fooling ourselves a bit if we're looking for again a big bomb, so to speak, a big event where okay, now we can see that X amount of people have been eradicated or whatever. We're looking for a big event that actually takes away a lot of people as a proof for the depopulation agenda. But again, as you say, this is more proof of a tippy-toe tactic where this is slowly being implemented and a plan that stretches for I don't know what 50 to 100 years maybe, and in a few years down the line we could then see the kind of hockey stick statistic basically when this takes off and people are babies aren't born and such. I don't know.
Yes, the Thomas Malthus wrote his essays on population and population control. He was the first, not the first, but a big economist for the British royalty and their corporations, which they run, like the British East India Company. He also was an economist for most of the European royalty, and he wrote his essay on population reduction, basically. And in his suggestions, he talked about Britain and other countries had colonies where they used either slaves or very low-paid workers across the world. And he had it all worked out right down to the diet, what kind of diet to feed them to keep them just functioning but not too bright. Just strong enough to do the work but not enough strength to walk off to another plantation for better conditions. This was done with meticulous detail. He was the one who wanted socialism to take over so that it could actually dominate the people. And the people themselves would pay for public housing, which we built on unhealthy areas like swampland, where the conditions would start to kill them off, especially the very young. This was all advocated in his treatise in the 1700s. It's never really stopped. the elite have always been concerned about losing control over the people if it hits a magic number.
And I guess for, during a time now then, during the period that we've, 50, 60, 70 years back, that there have been interest in actually having a lot of people around for the ability to, have them as workers, building a lot of stuff, constructing a lot of stuff, implementing the industrial age up to the point where we're at now, maybe. But so for a period, is it true, do you think, that there were interest in, having a lot of people around to be able to implement the kind of industry that they have now, basically?
That's right. They knew really, even partway through the industrial era, the Industrial Revolution, they knew it wouldn't last forever, that they would move offshore to cheaper places. And even then, at the height of the industrial era, they were planning the population reduction to follow. And sure enough, it was around after World War II, that's when they had signed in the treaties in World War II to start to de-industrialize countries like Britain in preparation for the European Union. And in 1948, they set up governmental departments in every country in Europe that worked steadily on total integration of Europe, with population reduction to follow, with common laws to do with inoculations especially, which is interesting. And you'll see the population falling at the same rate in most countries. It wasn't just because people had more money to spend to buy a car or whatever. It was also the fact that we're becoming more infertile.
This is interesting that you mentioned this too, of course. With the EU and introduction of different countries into that, I was reading a little bit about George Soros. I think he was referred to or known for, someone in quotes here, for breaking the Bank of England, and he even was connected with, I know, helping to break, as it were, the Swedish currency during. Back in 1992, basically, to help to devalue the crowns or kronas we have up here, the currency, and and many claim that this was the kind of financial trouble, when this was implemented or when this was taken into place, that this actually helped to spur people, out of fear, of course, but to go into the European Union to prevent things like this happening again. And
That's right.
And it's very
the problem and offer the solution.
Exactly, and it's very interesting that during that time, our prime minister was Carl Bildt, and he of course is a Bilderberger, same as George Soros at that time, and so there are a few connections here. I mean they might be obscure in that sense again, but there again it seems to implement the idea that okay, these guys are cooperating up there on that level because they know that they want to introduce the European Union as a first step, and in order for that to happen, we have to have some kind of destabilized situation in those countries that are financially strong or don't have a reason maybe to enter these unions.
That's right. It's more the public who must be convinced. The elite are all in on the game.
Yeah.
And George Soros is basically a front man for Rothschild anyway.
Well, yeah.
The Rothschilds don't only run the British system
and
the Bank of England, which is their treasury in a sense, but they also still have their private banks for lending as well. And Mr. Soros wouldn't make a move without permission from his boss. But Soros did write a half page on how he did it in the British newspapers a few years ago. Openly boasting that he and two friends did it all on the phone. They chose to buy lots of bonds, then claim they were going to drop them all, panicked at the Bank of England, and that the Bank of England had to borrow from the international bankers, which also includes the Rothschilds again,
there you go,
to keep themselves afloat and devalue the pound. So they not only do they do it, they boast about it. However, the very fact that Mr. Soros is not only walking around today free and in one piece tells you he was authorized by the establishment itself. Or he wouldn't be walking anywhere.
That's right. And it's so easy because I think we fool ourselves into believing that in that sense that there are, people, having control over this or regulating or being able to prevent this or whatever. I think, again, we have to remind, everyone, and I have to do that myself, that we are living in their system. They created it. They set that up, and it doesn't matter in that sense what we do, as long as we keep fighting within that system, in a sense, because they can, they control it, basically.
This is theirs. This is a psychopathic structure.
Yeah.
Which we've been trained to believe is reality because we were born into it.
Yeah.
The same as our parents before us. There's nothing humane in the system whatsoever.
Oh my! I'm thinking also about going back again to the Bilderbergers here, but Prince Bernhard, one of the I know, and his I think his daughter, the Queen Beatrix of the Netherlands, have been kind of referred to, I guess, as the glue that holds the the Bilderberg group together. I don't know. What's your take on what their particular role in all of this is?
Well, Bernhard, sure. I mean, he was so well known. He was a supporter of the Nazis. And
do you know if he actually was a former SS Nazi officer?
I know he had a uniform given to them, but lots of them did. Even Prince Philip, the Queen of England's husband, his father, I've still got the photographs here of his father, who was also given an SS uniform by the Nazis.
Okay.
Lots of them wore the Nazi uniform and had been awarded it by the German Reichstag.
Sure.
So they're all part of the same family, as you see, really at the top.
Yeah.
They're all related to each other. When you read in history of the great experiments in history, the American Revolution with the Constitution was called an experiment. Yeah. The next thing they did, they also gave a form of democracy to other countries in Europe, including England. And they observed that. Then they gave communism to Russia and observed that. As each one in history, by the big authors, the authorized historians, is called a great experiment. And they watched all forms of it to see what was the best way, not to help the people, but to control the people. Sure. And in their own books, they say that this is from the big groups, like the Club of Rome and so on. They say that the best one that they observed was communism. Because for an elite group to run it efficiently and quickly, make rapid changes, communism was the best way. So they were amalgamating democracy, fascism really, with communism to call it the third way, as Albert Toffler called it in his book. The bringing together for the next era of fascism at the top, that's public-private corporations. Government and private business, international business tied together with a communistic bureaucracy running a communistic people below them. Do you know if parallel government outside of it all, they can make rapid decisions and have them rapidly implemented without the slowness of the regular bureaucracies. That's the system that's in place today.
Okay, so but do you know if at that time a few countries have been named as kind of these first experimenters? Because I know that Sweden in some instance was named as the next developing stage after the collapse, or before, I guess, even, but before the Soviet Union collapsed in its first incarnation, at least. But I know the Sweden was mentioned as kind of that kind of political system. Have you heard about that?
Yes, they did. They observed Sweden and implemented a lot of changes there that were different than our countries. The big promoters from the 1800s, in fact, like H.G. Wells, into the 1900s, Bertrand Russell and others, basically formed the type of school systems you'd have where they would promote early sexual contact and so on to see what effect it would have if it could possibly destroy the family. So they used Sweden and Denmark. That was another prototype for these methods to be introduced. Through the schooling system, too, to give a lot of communistic ideas,